Pick 30 is where we started tonight. That is where the Green Bay Packers were slated to pick, and we watched players go one by one. Rumors of trade ups for wide receivers, rumors of potentially taking a linebacker, and instead we have a trade up. We did get a trade up from 30 to 26, and Green Bay took Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. So let's start with some of the basic storylines. Number one that is interesting, Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers are represented by either the same agent or the same agency. I am working to confirm which exactly that is. And the other one is that 15 years ago, as we record tonight on April 23rd, 15 years ago tonight, the Packers selected Aaron Rodgers when they still had Brett Favre on their roster. So if you want some similarities, there you go. And I'm shocked. And we'll get into some more stuff as we're going. So I'm your host tonight. I am Jacob Westendorf. And of course, I am joined by Jason Perrone. Jason, we watched the draft together, and maybe we need to stop doing that.
Second year in a row, and a second year in a row that we've had a lot to process after the Packers' first pick in the draft.
That is correct. And I have somebody else with me. That is Jacob Morley of Arrowhead Pride, the Cheesehead TV draft guide. And Jake, I got to say, the biggest reason that I wanted to have you on is because you were somebody in, I think, September said, what if the Packers took Jordan Love or something like that? So I don't know if that makes you a prophet, but I also know that you said it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing. So you are high on Jordan Love, but welcome to the show. How was covering the draft for Arrowhead?
It's good. It's interesting because we got two pretty upset fan bases right now. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, I called, what did I say? On September 24th, I just said Jordan Love would be a really fun first-round pick for the Packers in 2020 because he's got all the tools in the world, right? I mean, you look at, the last 2 years you guys just mentioned, they took two guys that do not have the ceiling. Like as Michael Jordan loved to say, the ceiling is the roof for these guys.
Carolina sucks. Just throwing that out there.
They can be as good as they want to be. The thing about these guys is they rarely hit. And so that's kind of where we're at, and we'll get into it. I'm sure the timing of it is still weird. It's very weird, but I like Jordan Love a lot. I do. I think he's you'll see in the Packer Report stuff, I compared him to Patrick Mahomes, especially now that he's in a place where he can sit and he does not need to play right away. But when you look at these two guys strictly from arm talent perspective, man, the way, some guys have big arms. Like Joe Flacco's got a cannon for an arm. He can throw the ball a mile. Patrick Mahomes has got a big arm. Aaron Rodgers has got a big arm. But the difference between a guy like Flacco and a guy like Rodgers, Mahomes, and Jordan Love is how athletically they throw the ball. When the ball comes off their hand, it's different. They can throw it from different platforms. They can throw it out of structure, the sidearm, different levels, all that stuff. Like, there's nothing Love can't do with the ball. 2019 tape was not as good as 2018. That's going to be the big question, is why didn't he get better his senior year? And I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think anyone does. And that's going to be something that he's going to have to answer here in Green Bay as we watch this unfold. But one thing our buddy Andy Herman just tweeted, and this cracks me up because it's so true. I'm trying to keep a light heart about this because I know a lot of people are upset. And I don't really know how I feel about it quite yet, but Andy said, I would give about $1 bajillion to hear Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers' phone conversation tonight.
Yeah, so that's my first question. Do you think they're talking like right now?
Gosh, no, I don't know. And if they are, that would be because it's the shoe, the shoe's on the other foot, right? Like, I mean,
full
this
circle.
This is rare for something like this to happen to a guy like Rodgers, or to anyone. I mean, like, you came in as the young gun. There's an old established Hall of Fame quarterback that nobody really thought should be pushed by a young guy. And yet the Packers have done it now twice. And so Rodgers now is the old man looking at this young gun who's, coming in, gunning for his job. And just like Rodgers, he's going to be a 21-year-old rookie, a super young rookie. So it's going to be interesting. How is Rodgers, going to approach Favre with it? Are they going to, be endeared to each other even more now? And is Rodgers going to learn from the way that Favre treated him when he was a young guy there? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, from a media standpoint, from a breaking down a pundit standpoint, whatever the hell you want to call us, this is fascinating. It's an opportunity because Aaron Rodgers has been asked about that situation a million times. Ad nausea, how Favre treated him and that relationship wasn't great to start and those kinds of things. And it's now an opportunity for Rodgers is, are you going to do the same things to this new kid that Favre did to you? And that's been talked about by Favre too. He basically said, like, I told him it's not my job to get you ready to play. And he told the Packers that too. It's not my job to get my replacement ready to play. I'm curious if Rodgers will feel that way considering he's already gone through it. And let me say this too. I fully understand Brett Favre feeling that way. If you guys think about it, in all of our job fields, at some point, they've hired somebody, most likely, unless you're just an all-around stud like Jason in his job field, but they've hired somebody that you could feasibly perceive as a threat. And that is a scary feeling. And I can tell you when that's happened, at least on my end, I helped them, but I didn't tell them all the little tricks of the trade and stuff like that, because eventually I thought that person was there to replace me. And Brett Favre knew that. And Jordan Love, let's make no mistake about this, guys. Jordan Love is the heir apparent to the throne of Green Bay Packers quarterback, because you do not trade up for a quarterback in the first round of any draft class, assuming he's never going to play. And I know the whole thing about, well, if a quarterback's there, you don't pass him up and all those sorts of things. It's a little different if Jordan Love falls to pick number 30, because the investment is still a first-round pick, but it's not quite the same. Now, Brian Gutekunst said 25 players have been taken to this point. I am so worried that one of Seattle, Baltimore, or the Titans are going to pick you. We are going up to get you. That is what Brian Gutekunst said tonight. So let's start about this. Let's do some reactions from around the team, basically the big people that this affects. So let's first, I do want to start with Aaron Rodgers, because that is the biggest part of the storyline. Jake kind of laid out a few different things that are kind of interesting about the storyline, but let's get something out of the way very quickly, because I think the first thing from what I noticed on the Twitter machine and my Facebook page and anything social media and friends texting me on all that stuff is, oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to be pissed. Well, my opinion on that is very simple. And that is, I do not care about Aaron Rodgers' feelings. And if the Packers hurt his feelings tonight, too bad. If they took Aaron Rodgers' feelings into account on everything, James Jones, Jordy Nelson, and James Jones, Jordy Nelson, and Randall Cobb would still be the Packers wide receivers. Or at least they would have stuck around for a couple more years. Maybe I'm exaggerating it a little bit for effect. But it's still organization over player. And with the reality of this situation is, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers are the same level of NFL legend. And they're the same level, Hall of Fame quarterback, all that stuff in Green Bay. If Brett Favre can be replaced kind of unceremoniously, so can Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, and we'll get into some reasons why I don't necessarily like what they've done tonight. I think you guys can tell. But I don't care how Aaron Rodgers feels. This is not the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers is. It's the Green Bay Packers. And there's 89 other men on this roster, 52 other men eventually once they pare everything down. And the NFL's, guys, the Patriots told Tom Brady, the consensus greatest quarterback of all time, to pound sand. This can happen to anybody. And I think that's what's happened tonight. So, Jason, my first question to you is, one, how do you think Aaron Rodgers feels right now? And two, do you really care?
Well, I don't think he's happy about it. I wondered if the team might have told him what they were going to do. I think obviously conventional wisdom says you shouldn't run the team around a player like you guys have said already. I I do care a little bit, but that's because I want this team to be competitive every season, and I know that Aaron Rodgers is sensitive. If we're just being honest right now, I don't think I'm being harsh. Aaron Rodgers is sensitive. So is this going to impact the way that he plays? He's an aging quarterback. I don't think it's wrong for the Packers to consider their future plan. And there's a reason why the rest of us are sitting at home watching Brian Gutekunst make the pick, and he's the one making the pick because the team trusts him to make the best decision. So as fans, we can't want this to fail. It just flabbergasts me when I see fans get so bent out of shape that they actually want to see it fall apart because they're that upset or they're that angry. How did we feel 15 years ago? I'll be honest with you. I like the excitement of what happened in the moment, but when 2008 happened 3 years later, I was not happy. I was very much, doubting that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to take over and make the Packers into something and be what he ended up being. So, not that they're the same guy, but if you're wondering how Rodgers is going to play this season, you might spend some time worrying about whether or not this is going to get inside of his head and affect his play. But think about how the Packers must feel right now. I mean, we talked a little bit before we started recording. Matt LaFleur has spent an entire season with Aaron Rodgers, one of the better quarterbacks of the last decade that have ever played football, in his offense, and obviously saw enough to say, and maybe, I doubt that he was at odds with the GM, but enough to say, let's go get our guy. Let's get our quarterback. I'm a new head coach. I inherited Aaron Rodgers. He is a great talent, but the reality is he's on the other side of 35 now. So the Packers clearly made their choice.
Jake, obviously the Packers have made their choice, and that's kind of my first question. You laid out some of those thoughts and everything that you had and how maybe Rodgers could be feeling and how he could treat Jordan Love. But I mean, specifically to that question is, clearly Brian Gutekunst doesn't care. Should he?
No, he should. I mean, he shouldn't. The Packers' job is to win games, and winning games, if that means taking a young quarterback to replace your Hall of Fame quarterback, that's what it is. Another thought a lot of thoughts are coming and going right now, but you think about it, the Packers didn't spend a top 10 draft pick on Jordan Love. They took him at the end of the first round. They traded pick 136 to move up, which is, go look at the last 136 draft picks and tell me who you recognize. In 3 years from now, the Packers are going to know what they have in Jordan Love, and they're going to know if he can play in this league, and they're going to know if he can't. And if he can't, that might cost Goody his job. It might. But honestly, it's a bust after 3 years. And if Rodgers is still playing after 3 years, at least they still know where they stand. They at least are going to know we have someone waiting in the wings, or we don't, which is in a lot better shape than a lot of these teams are when their old, superstar quarterback is ready to hang them up. So I can kind of see it from that perspective as well. I know that's not really answering your question. In short, no, I think Goody is doing what he thinks is best, for his job, and to be the GM of the Packers for a long time. He needs to hitch his wagon to a quarterback, and for better or worse, he just did it.
Yeah, that is the kind of the interesting part. So that's Brian Gutekunst. I take that back. That was the Aaron Rodgers portion of things. We kind of put Gutekunst in it, but let's talk about him, because now I thought he threw his nuts on the table last year when he took Rashawn Gary, because that is, at least in my opinion, I thought at the time, the ultimate boomer bust pick. Like you kind of mentioned earlier, Jake, he does not have a ceiling. If Rashawn Gary is good, there's no ceiling for him. High level athlete, freakazoid, all that stuff. That's been over. This isn't about Rashawn Gary. This is less of a boomer bust pick. Well, it kind of is, but more so the idea that, like you said, Jordan Love is not going to be the starter, barring a unforeseen injury or retirement by Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. 2, maybe 3, most likely 3. I will get the cap numbers here for you guys in a little bit, just to have the exact numbers from Ken Ingalls. But Gutekunst, I kind of said it. Ron Wolf took his risk, and I promise if Twitter and everything existed, we'd be asking, why in the hell did we trade a first-round pick for a third-string quarterback? I could promise you we all said that. A lot of people, some people weren't happy. most people, I would say, the consensus was that people weren't happy when the Packers took Aaron Rodgers. 14-year-old me, I liked it, but that was 14-year-old me. Now the consensus is about the same. Why didn't the Packers help Aaron Rodgers and try to win right now? And Brian Gutekunst, I also believe, so here's kind of my thought on Gutekunst's thought process, is he said in press conferences that, we have Aaron Rodgers and we're going to be in it to win it every year. And he kind of pushed back a little bit when asked about his quarterback's play. He always said he would disagree that Aaron didn't have a good season. I believe it was Zach Cruz of Packers Wire said, when you trade up in the first round to take a quarterback from Utah State, now granted, this isn't helmet scouting and that's not what Zach was doing, but Utah State is not Michigan. It's not Ohio State. It's not Alabama. It's not LSU. It's not a high-level program. If you trade up to take a quarterback in the first round, you say at least something about how you feel about your current quarterback's play. So I also think that Gutekunst is telling you that, yeah, we believe we were deficient in the weapons area. He talked about the receiver position. They tried to add Austin Hooper as a veteran pass catcher this offseason. And I'm sure they'll add a receiver and some different skill players as the weekend continues here. But Brian Gutekunst told you that he thinks his quarterback's play is slipping. And that, for better or for worse, is his opinion. And he's the one who has the opinion that matters the most in the room. He took the quarterback. Here's the reality. Brian Gutekunst threw his cards on the table. This is his quarterback. This is who he believes is going to be part of the future of the Green Bay Packers. And this day was always coming. It was always coming. Gutekunst was always going to take a quarterback for Green Bay at some point to be Aaron Rodgers' successor. I don't think a lot of us thought that was going to be this year, let alone tonight, for that matter, in the first round. If Jordan Love, and Jake, you kind of just said this too, if Jordan Love is good, Brian Gutekunst will be the general manager for a long time. If Jordan Love busts, Brian Gutekunst is getting fired. And that is the kind of level of pick he made. Now, in a way, I admire the courage of his convictions, kind of the same way I admired Ted Thompson's back in 2005. And maybe 15 years from now, we're reading an oral history about how Jordan Love got drafted during a coronavirus pandemic in an online draft. That might be interesting. But the reality is, and I'll be the first one to say this, if Jordan Love is good, I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong. I cannot endorse this from Brian Gutekunst. Kind of the same way, and I know I've been a defender to some degree on this show of Rashawn Gary, but I also said at the time I didn't like the pick. I'm defending him because I think it feels weird that people are like rooting for him to fail to prove their point. But that's, again, this isn't a Rashawn Gary show. If Jordan Love is good, I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong. It's my pinned tweet on my Twitter profile, at Jacob Westendorf. Go find it. If Jordan Love is good, I'll admit I was wrong. But I can't endorse this because I wasn't high on Jordan Love. He gives me, Jake, you mentioned Patrick Mahomes, and that's your upside. The downside is Deshaun Kaiser. And admittedly, I really like Deshaun Kaiser going into that draft, and that's something I'm trying to learn from. And those are the vibes that I get from Love is Deshaun Kaiser. That's terrifying. Deshaun Kaiser is not in the NFL. He was a third stringer on the Raiders. I don't know if he's still under contract, quite frankly. But I can't endorse. Here's my other thing. I said that I believed if he fell to 30 and fell in your lap, then I can at least try to understand it. To move up and take him, I guess Gutekunst will know more than we did as to what the board looked like and who was trading for what, but the Seahawks are set at quarterback. They weren't picking Jordan Love, most likely. The Ravens have the reigning MVP, and he's young. They probably weren't taking him. The Titans just gave Ryan Tannehill the bag. They probably weren't taking Jordan Love either. So I don't know why they felt that they had to trade up to go get a quarterback. It felt like a panic move or something that, again, and this is kind of the process I talked about a little bit with Rashawn Gary. They said last year they locked in on Rashawn Gary in February. That's bad process to me. To be so sure of who you're drafting 2 months in advance when there's so much information that you probably don't fully have available yet is rough. And again, I can't endorse this. I used to be a big proponent of the Keep Calm and Trust Ted fan club. Ted Thompson had a lot of money in the bank, so to speak, even when things started to not go well. I don't know at this point how you could trust Brian Gutekunst. And I'm not saying he's a bad general manager. I'm just saying at this point, and we've talked about this before, the three of us, draft picks you feel good about going into 2020. Jair Alexander, Elton Jenkins, and Darnell Savage. And you can kind of debate on Darnell Savage. Now, that's maybe not fair to some of last year's rookies. I'm not saying Rashawn Gary's a bust. I'm not saying Jay Sternberger won't be good. I'm not saying Kiki. All those guys won't be good. But add all that together with this particular process of tonight, I can't endorse that. And Brian Gutekunst is going to have a lot of explaining to do and frankly might end up out of a job and out of the NFL if Jordan Love busts out. That's the level of decision he made tonight. That is what we're talking about with him. But whenever somebody says, I trust Brian Gutekunst, I would have to ask you why. Because outside of those three picks I just mentioned and signing the Super Smith brothers and Adrian Amos, and really, I mean, guys, if we want to look at his free agency track record, and I know for the most part, free agency doesn't work out that well. His free agent track record's not all that great either. It's certainly not batting, 750, 1,000 or something like that. He did well last year with those three guys, but Billy Turner's an average player. Jimmy Graham was bad. Tremont Williams was okay, and Muhammad Wilkerson didn't work out. It's hard to really give too much flack to him for a one-year deal. But at any rate, and we'll see what happens this year with Kirksey and Ricky Wagner. I'm personally not a big fan of Rick Wagner. Kirksey I have some hope for. So that's my thoughts on Brian Gutekunst. Jake, moving into,
Hey, guys, one more thing real quick. This is kind of perfect timing, Jake, because Gutekunst is at the podium. And so I will read a couple tweets a couple comments that he's made so far.
Please do.
Because he does address the pick and he also addressed the Aaron Rodgers thing. So real quick, Zach Halpern tweets, Gutekunst on Jordan Love. The way our board fell this year, he was the best player left, plain and simple. Zach Jacobson, Brian Gutekunst says he hasn't talked to Aaron Rodgers yet, but the quote is, he's obviously been through this and he's a pro. The way the board fell, this was the best decision for the Packers. Aaron has been around a long time, and he knows what we're playing for right now. We can dissect that comment or that sentence later. That's interesting. And then Andy Herman on whether or not he had to have courage to make the pick. Gutekunst said, I don't think so. It's the same process every year. Try to build a board for the best player available. He was the best player yet. We were excited to get it. Think he has a really good future in this league. So those are just a few comments that I'm reading from Brian Gutekunst tonight after the Love pick.
And to just touch base on Gutekunst still, why does he get fired? And I get what you're saying, and you're right. It's because it's a quarterback, but he trades up and takes Patrick Queen, and the dude can't play in the NFL. Dude stinks. He's not getting fired for that.
Nope, you're right.
It's in a vacuum. It's interesting, but you're right though. That is how valuable these quarterbacks are because they're putting their eggs in the Jordan Love basket to say, "Hey, come lead our franchise." But they can still walk away from this draft with an offensive tackle for the future. They can walk away in this draft with a wide receiver or two that can contribute next year. They can walk away in this draft from some good pieces in the defensive backfield. Like this draft still has to play out as well. And they did not give up a ton to move up. And if they want to recoup that 4th round pick, they have the ammo on day 3 to do it. So if Goody thinks this is the best player left on the board, then all we can do is say, I hope you're right. and I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong, too. You never know these things. It's interesting the weight that we put on the quarterback position and how it's a job, it's a career maker or breaker. It's wild.
So interesting here, Gutekunst in addition, as you guys were going through some of that, I looked. He just said we have the best quarterback in the NFL, and we hope to have him for a while. As I mentioned earlier,
and I'm not sure which one he's talking about right now. I'd read that by itself.
Yeah, good point there, Jason. No, he doesn't believe that, and I'm sorry. Gutekunst he's a good talker, and he's trying to kind of smooth things over, I guess, with the quarterback. He said there weren't a lot of options left, so clearly there were some guys that he wanted that were gone. I'll say this. I do know that when Brandon Ayuk went, Jason, you and I were together, that made 6 receivers, and that was the only 6 that I was willing to take in the first round. So I was okay with them not picking a receiver. So here's kind of my thought to kind of finish my thoughts on Gutekunst. I kept saying, I've been talking to you guys about A, B, and C players. For reference, I had Jordan Love as a C player. My A players left at the time the Packers were on the clock were Josh Jones, Xavier McKinney, Antoine Winfield, Patrick Queen, and then they took Brandon Ayuk off the board, obviously. So those were the guys that were on my board as a A-level player. And then they took a C-level player. So I think you can understand my disdain a little bit. So guys, between the two of you, any thoughts? We kind of talked about Gutekunst. Jake, yeah, you're right. I mean, you talked about if he trades up for Patrick Queen or hell, if he trades up for Ezra Cleveland, it really doesn't matter who he trades up for. If it's not a quarterback, he's not getting fired. It's the same as, in the years past when he traded up for Darnell Savage. If Darnell Savage stinks, he's not getting fired. If Jair Alexander stinks, he's not getting fired. If Warren Burks stinks, he's not getting fired. If Jordan Love stinks, he's getting fired. That's how it works. That's why Ryan Pace is going to get fired, because Mitchell Trubisky sucks. That's regardless of everything else Ryan Pace has done, and there's some decent stuff in there. Trading for Khalil Mack, drafting Eddie Jackson. There's some good players in Chicago, obviously. That's why Ryan Pace will get fired after the Bears go 7-9 this year or something like that. So that's kind of the thought process there. And yeah, that's the level of decision. And again, I admire the courage. He must feel really confident about this quarterback. Otherwise, I mean, obviously you wouldn't have taken him, but in order to take him with those ramifications, it's Ted level confidence. And like I said, that is admirable, if nothing else. Whether or not it works out remains to be seen. You can also admire a fool from time to time. So guys, any closing thoughts on Brian Gutekunst at this point and what this pick means for him specifically tonight?
Not really, man. We covered it all. He's putting it out there. He's saying this is going to be my legacy in Green Bay. And, the one thing that does give me hope is last year they were big time in on Drew Lock. They really liked Drew Lock last year, who I think is actually a pretty similar prospect to Jordan Love. When you talk about the issues with kind of the erratic play, kind of some of the big arm, kind of a wild live arm. And Drew Lock played really well his rookie year.
He did. And you know what? They might have a decent little future around him with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and some of those dudes that they're adding around him. But go on. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying. And if they think they saw something that Drew Lock has in Jordan Love, and make no bones about it, Jordan Love is the most talented quarterback in this draft class. Like, there's no comparison. He's got more talent than Drew Lock, but if he has the mental makeup, that's the only thing we really don't know about is the mental makeup. Does he love football? Is he going to put in the work? Is he the cerebral type quarterback that's going to be able to pick apart an NFL defense? I have no idea. Apparently Gutekunst thinks he can. So,
and on that note, this is a complex offense that he'll have to learn. This is essentially a combination of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and people have talked about that. Hell, Aaron Rodgers, it took a while for him to learn. And Aaron Rodgers' cerebral ability is lauded by many. But again, please continue.
And that's the other thing I would say too is I'm already looking at Twitter, and Packers fans, you may not be happy with this pick, but Jordan Love did not choose to come here either. So don't be a dick. Don't be a jerk and tweet at him. I'm already seeing stupid crap on his Twitter timeline. Like, be better. Be better than that. Be a Packers fan. The type of fan that people talk about, the greatest fans in the NFL, be that type of fan. Welcome this kid to a town that he has never been here before. He's coming out of his comfort zone. He's going to have to be underneath Aaron Rodgers. Be nice to him. You know what I mean? Like, let's be better.
Right. Oh, yeah, damn right. I mean, I know at the time, and think about it. I mean, again, I hated making this comparison, but now we have to make it because it happened again. But I remember years ago, I mean, we're all basically, well, Jake and I are about the same age. Jason, well, yeah. Brett Favre was my hero. I had a shrine in my room to Brett Favre. Boyhood hero, no question about it. When Aaron Rodgers became the starting quarterback, I remember the day they traded Brett Favre, I bought an Aaron Rodgers jersey. Now, granted, I didn't have much to spend my money on. Otherwise, am I going to buy a Jordan Love jersey these days? Maybe not. But back then, that was my way of supporting the quarterback. And I'm with you. Don't be a dick. That's like rule number one in life in general is don't be a dick. And like you said, Jordan Love didn't choose to come here. And at the end of the day, regardless of how we feel about this pick, we're all Packers fans. And if Jordan Love is successful, that's what we want. We don't want him to be bad, obviously. That would be not a good thing. So just, you don't have to like the pick, but you don't have to boo the player either. It's kind of the same when, Rodgers took over and Rodgers said people threatening to break his arms and break his legs and getting booed in the atrium and all kinds of different stuff. I just don't do those things. So, Jason, any closing thoughts before we move into Matt LaFleur?
One more comment from Goot on, he does address the fan base. And so he says, I can understand the fan base and people thinking, why would you do this at this time? Which is me and you, Jake, I think. At the time we watched the pick happen live. And he said, I just think the value of our board and the way it fell was the best thing for the Green Bay Packers. And everyone has to remember, that's what Brian Gutekunst's job is. It's not to appease Aaron Rodgers. It's not to make the fans happy with every move that he makes. It's to make the best decisions for the team and their future. And he did. He stuck it all out on the table tonight, whether we were ready for it or not. This is the Green Bay Packers plan, because the guy that's been tasked with making that decision made it tonight. Even though we thought it shouldn't be made until next year or the year after, or maybe not even for 2 more years, it was made tonight. And it just happens to fall on the 15th anniversary of the same day that Aaron Rodgers was drafted, probably well before anybody thought that the Packers would take a quarterback when Brett Favre was the quarterback. So we are going to make that comparison. We are going to draw back on it. But even more to other Jake's point, we've been through this before. We already know what Aaron Rodgers went through and some of the things that happened and the way that certain fans treated him. And let's not be that. We're Packers fans. You can't want the team to fail. There will be some out there that literally do want the team to fail because they hate the pick or they have other agendas and other vendettas.
And those people are weird. So, Jason, real quick, before you finish your point, hold that thought. I just know I got to go to Jake real quick because he's got to bounce. So, Jake, before you go, where can we follow you on Twitter? And like I said, you were high on Jordan Love. Give me an elevator pitch to feel better tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Morley. All I'm going to say is, quarterbacks are the highest currency in sports. If there's nothing more valuable than a good NFL quarterback, Packers fans, we've been spoiled because it's not easy to find them. You have to take swings on them. Jordan Love has the potential to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm not saying he will be. He's got a long way to go, but he has every single tool in his toolbox to be great. And it's not easy to find great quarterbacks. So the Packers are absolutely taking a swing here. And if they hit on this, Packers fans, you are looking at 45 years of great NFL quarterback play. That is a risk that I'm willing to take because we are spoiled. And you know what? Heck, I want to continue to be spoiled. I'm about to jump on a podcast here with some Chiefs writers who went through a 52-year drought of good NFL quarterback play. And the Packers, if they hit on this, are about looking at that same time range of fantastic quarterback play. So love it or hate it, they're swinging for the fences. I hope they made a good connection here.
And that is the hope indeed. Jake, thanks for joining us. We will see you again, I'm sure, before the season starts, or maybe we'll have to reconvene this show when Jordan Love gets his Hall of Fame bust in Canton in the year 2050. Jason, you'll be like 95 years old by then, so maybe he won't be here.
I'll be around to see it. No,
right. So we'll hit the ground running. Jake, good to see you. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow during the second stage of the draft, and maybe Green Bay will take our guy Donovan Peoples-Jones here before the weekend is over. So you want to go boom or bust? Let's go boom or bust, baby, all the way around. Jake, enjoy Arrowhead Pride. We'll see you next time around.
All right, take care, guys.
That was Jake Morley. I apologize for the camera feed at the moment. We had some issues, and it's 12 o'clock in the morning, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to fix some of that stuff. So bear with us. You guys are here to hear our voices for the most part anyways. But Jason, we were talking a little bit. You were finishing your thoughts on how the Packers fan base should react, and I assume you're kind of going with the, don't be a dick.
Am I still centered? Do I need to move?
No, you're good. For some reason, and I don't know why, we could see your ugly butt. You know what? Honestly, Jake, if you're going to watch this tomorrow, I'm kind of thankful we couldn't see your face for the most part because of that ugly ass mustache that you have. I know I said before when you were here that it was okay. It's terrible. I didn't have the balls to say that to your face, so I'm sorry, but that's where we're at. That's an awful mustache.
No, the other thing too, Jake, is that this just, people have narratives and they have preconceived ideas in their head. And I already see a bunch of tweets on Twitter, and I've kind of made the choice not to go on and say a bunch of things. I've retweeted a few things. I've made a couple comments. I basically reminded everybody what Aaron Rodgers said just a couple weeks ago, which was when he was asked about, what are you going to do if the Packers bring in a quarterback this offseason? And he's like, well, whoever they bring in, they're not going to beat me out anytime soon. Okay, well, now you get your chance to prove that and let that be the case and draw from your experiences as well. But people are now starting to put Brian Gutekunst in a box and say, this is what he does. He did this to us last year. We were disappointed last year when he took Rashawn Gary and he locked in on them. And Jake, I know you don't care for the thought process or that process. And I also have issues with locking in too much on one person. But I think, I don't know if this shows that Goot belongs in a box or if there isn't a box for him, because he's just so all over the place. I don't think that we still into his third draft or the first round that we know what this guy does or what he's going to do. I think next year we're going to be scratching our heads, wondering what he's going to do just as much. I think everyone just needs to have patience. And that's one thing the fan bases don't have anymore, because we want the instant gratification and all those other things. And the Packers have won for a long time. And there's a threat now to winning because they know what Aaron Rodgers can do. They don't know what Jordan Love can do. And it was this big risk. You've got to convince yourself to be even more patient when it comes to a quarterback, because this is not going to be a quick process. He's not stepping in and starting this year. You're not going to get any signs in 2020 of what Jordan Love can do unless something really bad happens to Aaron Rodgers. And obviously we don't want that to happen. Everybody needs to just chill out, take a step back. And again, we're Packers fans, Jake, like you said, we can't want this to fail.
Right. And I don't. At the end of the day, I think it will, but that is my opinion and my grading of the player before the draft. And like you've mentioned, I've done the homework, and I said this the other day on Twitter. What's the point of me going through this entire process and grading a player if I'm not going to have an opinion when they pick a guy? It's the same thing when they picked Rashawn Gary. I didn't have a very high opinion on him. Ultimately, I'm rooting for him because he plays for the Packers. That's just how it works. But I could still be objective and have an opinion and say, I don't think Love is good. And I didn't like him as a prospect. Hopefully Matt LaFleur can help him grow. And that's where I want to go now. Gutekunst, Jason, you've been mentioned some parts of his presser, said he wouldn't have given him a player that he didn't want, that LaFleur didn't want, that is. So LaFleur was on board with Jordan Love. Okay. This is now his task as well. In addition to Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur is now tasked with grooming the next quarterback, very similar to the way Mike McCarthy was when the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers. They fired Mike Sherman after Rodgers' rookie season, and part of McCarthy's job was to fix, quote-unquote, Brett Favre and help Aaron Rodgers grow into the franchise quarterback and Hall of Fame player that he is today. I'm not saying Matt LaFleur's got to make him a Hall of Famer, but him and Gutekunst are kind of lockstep on this. If Jordan Love is bad, one, the Packers probably won't be very good, which leads to it too. But if Jordan Love is bad, Matt LaFleur is getting fired. And that's also the reality. And I'm sure this was kind of the same feeling when they took Aaron Rodgers years ago, as if he's not good, a lot of people are getting fired. That's just kind of the nature of taking the quarterbacks. But talk to me about, one, LaFleur being on board with a quarterback, and two, what you kind of think that means for him and what he's tasked with now.
Well, I think the message is he has a voice in the room. There's no way that he doesn't. I don't think he's at odds with Brian Gutekunst. I'm just going off of the big smile that I saw LaFleur have on his face when he was on the phone in his own respective quarantine draft room. So after one season of Aaron Rodgers, the quote unquote, if Brian Gutekunst is going to say it, I'm going to quote him. He says he's got the best quarterback in the league. And again, I joke, we don't know which one he's talking about, but let's assume he's talking about Aaron Rodgers. After 1 year, Matt LaFleur saw enough to know that he was okay with getting somebody fresh and with maybe a little bit of a different skill set. You want to say younger, that's fine, that he can mold into his offense. He saw enough of what Aaron Rodgers did and did not do in the offense last season, whether it's fair or not, and went to Brian Gutekunst and said, hey, do what you do. The GM makes the pick, and some GMs don't care what the head coach wants. We've heard stories about draft picks where the GM and the head coach were complete odds, but I don't think that's the case in this situation. And as much as Brian Gutekunst is on the line now for making the Love pick, Matt LaFleur also has a lot of pressure on him to develop this kid to be ready when Aaron Rodgers moves on, whether it's because the team decides or Rodgers decides he's not going to play or he's not going to be in Green Bay anymore. So very vested. The head coach is very, very vested in this situation. And I think they're both in lockstep with their vision. And again, that's one of the reasons why I am a little more empathetic to Aaron Rodgers right now, because what is he thinking? How is he feeling? And I only say that because this is the quarterback of the team that I root for, and he's going to be the quarterback for at least 2 more years, probably 3. And I don't want to see the Packers struggle and suffer in any way. I want them to be competitive. I want Rodgers to get another ring. I want them to win another Super Bowl. They should have at least another Super Bowl as it is with Aaron Rodgers. So, but Matt LaFleur is a big part of the equation. And there's maybe not as much, but there's pretty close to as much pressure on him to make it work as there is on Gutekunst for picking him.
All right, I'm looking through here we go. I've got the Aaron Rodgers cap hit. So for everybody saying, when could they move on? This year, salary cap hit, $21 million and some change. Dead cap if he's cut is $51 million. Cap savings if he's cut is $29 million. They're far in the red on that. So, I mean, he's going to be the quarterback this year. After next year, cap savings if he's cut are $4 million. Dead cap is $31 million. He's the quarterback next year. 2022, dead cap $17 million, cap savings $22 million, $17 million if he's traded. The numbers if he's traded, I didn't get to those. I'm sorry. $45 million this year, $31 million next year, $17 million after 2022. He's probably the quarterback 3 years from now. And that is where this gets indefensible for me. Because you're talking 3 years. Jordan Love will have then 1 year plus an option year that they'll probably pick up because it's not as expensive. So they'll have 2 years to evaluate him before giving him a contract extension. Again, this is different from Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. And we've talked about those reasons a million times. Brian Gutekunst clearly doesn't care. He said long-term, this was the best decision for the Packers. Said he hasn't contacted Aaron Rodgers yet, which is fine. He doesn't have to. Just throwing the news out there as I get it. And that's the reality. Aaron Rodgers is quarterback for 2 years and probably 3. And that is where I'm really going to leave this because, quite frankly, what else is there to say? Matt LaFleur is tasked with developing Jordan Love and to be ready 3 years from now. And I get that people are upset. I understand wanting a player that can help the team win now and today. That's not what they did. So they went with a long-term decision. Hopefully this works out the same way that Aaron Rodgers did when the Packers took him when they needed immediate help to get Brett Favre to the Super Bowl. Ultimately, I think Jason and I are in lockstep on one thing. We may not like the pick. I know we don't because we talked about it for 45 minutes here tonight and probably about 2 hours before that. But the reality of the situation is rooting against Jordan Love does nothing. So the hope now is that we're all wearing number 10 Love jerseys 3 years from now, or whatever his number is. I don't know if they've given one out yet. We'll check that. I know it won't be 4 or 15 or 12. Anything after that seems to be relatively open. I'll guess number 10.
He wore 10 in college.
Wore 10 in college, exactly. So we'll see if that happens. But that's where we're at now. So that's going to do it. We're going to talk about days 2 and 3 at some point next week. We'll have Paul Brettel back. Hopefully he was on baby duty tonight. Thank you to Jake Morley for joining us tonight. I have Jason Perone. You can follow him on Twitter at Jason Perone. You can follow me. I'm at Jacob Westendorf. I need to get some whiskey or something because I'm still in shock and maybe I still will be on Monday morning. But thank you guys for listening. Enjoy the rest of the draft and hopefully it works out better than I anticipate tonight going. But thank you for listening and we'll see you guys next time.